Well, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to part 3. This is where global warming gets personal. Now, we've learned that not only is global warming real, it's more imminent and severe than we're being led to believe. We've also learned that we can actually end global warming with the technology that we've got right now. And given the immediacy of the problem, we'll need to do things and take risks we might not otherwise undertake. So here in part 3 is where the rubber meets the road. For most of us, we're so caught up in our everyday lives that we may not notice the subtle changes that are beginning to occur, but people in other parts of the world are noticing. In Bangladesh and certain South Sea islands, people are watching the oceans reclaim their lands and their islands and areas disappear. In Syria, it's not just the civil war that's caused millions of people to flee the country, it's also the unremitting and severe drought. The indigenous peoples of northern Alaska are watching the Arctic thaw right in front of their eyes. And in the Himalayas, glaciers that have stood unchanged for thousands of years are disappearing in a single lifetime. But even closer to home, the changes are starting to be seen. My wife and I live in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, where it's heavily wooded. In the record drought of recent years, we've watched pine, birch, and citrus trees that have been in place for over 60 years wither and die for lack of water. Summers seem to get increasingly insufferable, like today. Our electric bill seems to go up and up because we need to use the air conditioning more and more. Trees seem to lose their leaves later and later in the year and bloom earlier and earlier. And though we've had some relief recently, the recent record-breaking drought here in the Southwest saw reservoirs being depleted to near empty. The point of all this is to give some up-close and personal perspectives to what is beginning to occur. It is the Earth talking to us. We need to listen. What has global warming meant to you personally so far? How have you been affected? What subtle changes have you seen in your own everyday life that give you a clue that something is going on? Something for you to think about and observe. What we constantly need to keep in mind is that the Earth doesn't care about us. It doesn't care about our politics. It doesn't care about our economics. It doesn't care about our social issues. If we are foolish enough to violate the Earth's physics, it is us who are going to pay the price. 99% of all the species that have ever lived on this planet are extinct. The Earth has no problem making us the next. We need to understand that this is not a political or economic issue. This is a survival issue. We need to act as if our lives depend on us fixing this thing right now, because they do. We need to mount an all-out World War II level of effort in stopping this thing before it stops us. Nothing less will work. Effecting change requires action. We actually have to do something. Fortunately, there are things that we can incorporate into our everyday lives that will begin to move the bar. At today's Earth Day event, you've seen quite a number of these things. Things like recycling, organic foods, rooftop solar, energy efficiency, zero-emission vehicles, residential retrofits, indigenous landscaping, walking and bike-friendly green spaces, public transit, and climate advocacy groups. If you're wondering where to start, pick something. Doesn't matter, just start anywhere. The important thing is to start. Beyond this, it's imperative that we change our thinking. In fact, this is the single most important part, is how we think. Albert Einstein said, "The problems that exist in the world today cannot be solved by the level of thinking that created them." Solving the global warming problem requires us to raise our level of thinking and to look at things in a new way. If we allow the possibility that the problem can be solved, our minds then begin looking for solutions and we empower ourselves. Instead of slowing climate change, stop it altogether. Instead of fighting climate change, conquer it. Instead of reducing our carbon footprint, you eliminate it. There is no such thing as adapting to climate change. Global warming, if not stopped, is a game ender. Awareness is half the battle. And with awareness comes power, the power to consciously choose rather than blindly follow. This battle will not be won in some Herculean contest. It will instead be won in how we choose to think, act, and feel in the routine of our day-to-day lives. As we each believe and act like we're actually going to fix this thing, our collective consciousness approaches a critical mass and we move towards shifting the momentum. We're getting closer and closer every day. You can feel it. If all you can do right now is hold the thought that we will solve this thing, do that. Adopt an attitude of hope. In so doing, you become part of the solution. I wrote my book for the general public in terms that would make the topic easy to understand. I've had more than one reader tell me that this is the one book on global warming they'd always been looking for, but thought they would never find. Half the book deals with global warming and the technical solution to it. The other half of the book deals with the human element, because this is the critical factor that's going to make the difference and determine the outcome. And oddly enough, global warming is actually mankind's greatest opportunity, if you think about it. If we can set aside our differences long enough to learn to cooperate with each other to solve this civilization-ending problem we've got on our hands right now, I believe we'll enter a whole new era for mankind. In my journey from climate change skeptic to global warming advocate, I invested approximately 10,000 hours of my life over a period of 3.5 years, sorting truth from self-interest and fact from uninformed opinion. My book is a compilation of what I've learned in my journey. I've dedicated this phase of my life to carrying forward the message that we may yet overcome this developing planetary catastrophe. I've presented you with a very serious problem today. We've gone through the various solutions. Now it's up to us, you and me, to implement the solutions we've seen today and stop global warming. Look into your own grandchildren's and children's eyes. Put yourself in their place. If you do, you'll know what you need to do. For me, I want to leave this planet in a better condition than what it was when I got here, so that my grandchildren can enjoy the same beautiful world that I have in my life. Together, we can do it, but we need to do it now. Tomorrow will be too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. I think we'll take that challenge seriously. We'll do everything we can in Whittier to start making things happen. We've got beginning to build a base now. I think we begin to get a movement going somewhere. And it's got to happen at all levels. It's got to happen to individuals. It'll happen with different organizations. It'll happen with our city council. But I think we're on the brink of following up on what you're saying. Okay, yep. So we have some questions here.
Any questions? Once again, I've answered everything.
I'm sure there have got to be some questions. They'll start calling on people to invent questions.
You're talking about the, you know, what we have to do, because I think you're right. What our personal choices, you know, the car we buy, the purchases that we make do kind of affect. But what do you think the effect of the White House, considering they're climate deniers, they've basically appointed people in the EPA that are totally, you know, want to dismantle the EPA.
Right.
How do you think it's going to have an effect on the environmental movement and the alternative energy movement, things of that nature?
Oddly enough, I think that this is the best thing that the climate movement could happen to it. And the reason I say that is because we know the federal government moves with glacier speed, right? And we need to solve this thing a little faster than that. And what we're seeing is that the states and the large cities can move much more quickly in solving this thing. And people understand what's going on. We're seeing movement all over the place. And I think now that the pressure's been put back on the states and the cities, we're going to start seeing a lot more movement much more quickly. That's my opinion.
Another question? Gary?
I want to point out that nowadays glaciers are moving backwards.
Well, I'll take one away from Jerry, and that is he was telling us over lunch about a book that he was been given by his daughter, and which is written by Michael Bloomberg, who was going to be a candidate for president and decided not to be, and Carl Pope, who is the past president of Sierra Club. So maybe you would like to tell us what's in it, Jerry.
Craig has just told us what the main theme of it is. I'll demonstrate it by saying that basically Bloomberg, who was fundamental in making some major environmental changes in New York City, has been a key figure in organizing mayors in cities across the country. And in this book, he points out that 70% of global warming originates in cities.
That's right, I saw that article.
And he says that Fiorello LaGuardia, mayor of New York City, said there isn't a Republican method of cleaning streets or a Democratic method, but by golly, if those streets aren't clean, the mayor's going to hear about it, and he's going to lose the next election if he doesn't do something about it. So mayors are a lot more pragmatic and attuned to the people's needs than the people in Washington.
That's right.
And so he's basically saying, let's get going. And he's started a number of things along with the Sierra Club former CEO to get things moving in the cities across the country.
Right, and that's in league with what I see as far as being able to move more quickly. Exactly that. I saw that article. Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah, no, that's exciting news. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about corporations, which is that as a consumer, I find it really difficult to find products that help combat global warming, that use less plastic, that use less fossil fuels in making them. Do you have any advice on putting pressure on them to do that, or any insight in making those changes, like not on an individual level? I just find there's a lot of burden on me as a consumer to sort through all of that and find the information myself, and that can just be too much.
Yeah, it's very, two parts to that answer. Excuse me. There are a couple of publications, periodicals that I get that I found that are very positive and upbeat, and they focus on what is actually happening of a positive nature like you're talking about. And one of them is Yes Magazine, you may have heard of it, and the other one is The Intelligent Optimist. And look at those magazines because they do talk about that type of consciousness at the corporate level. The other part of the answer is that if we don't like what a corporation is doing, we can put pressure on them. Maybe not one person, but an organized movement, if you will. Don't buy their stuff. And corporations listen to one thing, money. So if we speak to them in the language they understand by withholding our money, and enough people do it, they'll change what they're doing. So,
Okay, so we're looking for
one more question here.
Yeah.
So really quick, I work for the post office.
Okay.
And so what I see on election days is we have a lot of paperwork that gets pushed through. And then it's sad to see people just grab it from us and straight to the trash. And most of the time it's just, is there any way we can just see how we can eliminate most of that paperwork or even make it smaller?
That's a big organization question, isn't it? Yeah, and my experience also is that sometimes large types of organizations like that also move at a very slow speed where they will not do the simple, obvious things like recycle paper from their offices and things like that and just put it in the trash. And I guess it really requires that the employees themselves put pressure on the organization to change. Because until there's the motivation on the corporate level, if you will, or the director level, whatever that is, they're not going to do anything. So it does require us at the individual level to finally just say, had it.
Okay, well, we're just about on time, so unless there's another question, I think we can move on to an appropriate follow-up, which is the Sierra Club.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you, Craig.